The hunt begins the Kethfor hunting lodge, high above Earth's atmosphere. The sleek hunting vessel Bloodfang drifted silently through space. Inside its luxurious observation deck, 3 alien beings studied holographic displays showing potential prey scattered across the planet below. The Kethfor were apex predators from the Andromeda galaxy, standing nearly 8 feet tall with sleek black carapaces, 4 arms tipped with razor-sharp claws, and glowing amber eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. Huntmaster Vextar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he reviewed the data. For 2 centuries, the Kethfor had traveled the galaxy seeking the ultimate hunting experience. They had stalked the crystal wolves of Vega Prime, hunted the shadow beasts of the Outer Rim, and now they had discovered something truly special on this backwater planet called Earth. The humans provide exceptional sport, Vextar rumbled to his hunting companions. Intelligent enough to be challenging, yet primitive enough to be helpless against our technology. They fight back with such delicious desperation. His lieutenant, Kral Thex, gestured toward the display, showing thermal signatures across North America. I have identified the perfect specimen, Huntmaster. A female, isolated in the northern wilderness. She carries recording equipment, suggesting she may be documenting local wildlife. The irony is exquisite. Vextar's amber eyes gleamed with predatory delight. Show me. Sarah Chun's last peaceful morning, Captain Sarah Chun crouched behind a fallen log, her camera lens focused on a magnificent brown bear fishing in the glacial stream ahead. The early morning mist hung low over the Alaskan wilderness, creating an ethereal backdrop for her wildlife photography. At 34, Sarah had spent 12 years as a military photographer before transitioning to nature documentaries. Her survival skills and combat training made her comfortable in the most remote locations on Earth. The bear looked up suddenly, its massive head turning towards something in the distance. Sarah followed its gaze but saw nothing unusual. The bear dropped its catch and lumbered away into the forest with surprising urgency. In her experience, bears didn't abandon food unless something seriously dangerous was approaching. Sarah packed her equipment quickly, her military instincts kicking in. She had learned to trust her gut feelings, and right now, every nerve in her body was screaming that something was wrong. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, no wind through the trees. She grabbed her satellite phone to call her base camp, but the device showed no signal. That was impossible. The emergency beacon in her pack should have been transmitting continuously, but its LED had gone dark. Someone or something was jamming her communications. The hunt begins above the tree line. 3 Kethfor warriors descended on silent gravitational platforms, their adaptive camouflage making them nearly invisible against the sky. They had been observing the human female for 2 days, studying her patterns and behavior. The Huntmaster had decreed that this prey would provide at least 3 days of entertainment before the final kill. Deploy the disruption field, Vextar commanded. Through their neural link, disable all primitive communication devices within a 50-kilometer radius. I want this human to understand the full scope of her isolation before we begin. Sarah felt the change in air pressure before she saw them. Years of combat experience had taught her to recognize the distinctive whine of advanced aircraft, even when they were operating in stealth mode. She dove behind a boulder just as the first plasma blast superheated the ground where she had been standing. The smell of ozone and melted earth filled her nostrils as she pressed herself against the cold granite. Her mind raced through possibilities. The energy signature was unlike anything in Earth's military arsenal. The targeting was too precise for conventional weapons. This was either an extremely classified test or something far worse. A voice spoke from somewhere above, the words strange and guttural, but somehow her mind understood them perfectly. Greetings, human prey. I am Huntmaster Vextar of the Kethfer Hunting Lodge. You have been selected for the honor of providing sport for our expedition. You may run, hide, or fight. The choice is yours. Know that your death, while inevitable, will be glorious. Sarah's blood ran cold. Not a military test. Not a hallucination. Something was hunting her, and it wasn't human. First contact. Sarah's training kicked in automatically. She needed intel, weapons, and a way to communicate with the outside world. Her backpack contained a week's worth of supplies, emergency medical kit, and a hunting knife. Not much against energy weapons, but she had worked with less. She activated the emergency beacon on her GPS device, hoping the signal might punch through. Whatever was jamming her communications. The device lit up briefly before sparking and dying. The hunters had technology that could fry electronics at range. 47 minutes until the next orbital communication window, she whispered to herself, checking her watch. If I can survive that long and reach higher ground, maybe I can get a message out. The forest around her erupted in controlled explosions as the aliens began their systematic hunt. They weren't trying to kill her quickly. They were hurting her, forcing her to move in a specific direction. Sarah recognized the tactic from her military days. These creatures understood strategy and psychological warfare. She moved through the undergrowth with practiced stealth, using every piece of cover available. Behind her, she could hear the hunters communicating in their alien language, their voices carrying an unmistakable tone of amusement. They were enjoying this. Sarah reached a small clearing and froze. In the center stood a metallic object about the size of a briefcase, humming with energy. It was clearly alien in design, all smooth curves and glowing panels. Some kind of scanning device or trap. Curious about our technology, human? Vextar's voice came from the trees. That is a neural mapper. It will study your primitive brain, patterns, and identify your greatest fears. The final phase of our hunt will be ... personalized. Sarah had heard enough. She pulled a white phosphorus grenade from her emergency kit, a leftover from her military days that she kept for emergency. Signaling. The grenade would burn at over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit and produce a massive smoke screen. She pulled the pin and hurled it toward the alien device. The explosion was blinding. The alien scanner melted into slag as white-hot phosphorus scattered across the clearing. Sarah heard screams from the hunters, their adaptive camouflage failing as the intense heat signature overwhelmed their systems. For the first time, she could see them clearly. 3 bipedal aliens with black carapaces and 4 arms each, there. Amber eyes wide with shock and pain. One of them was clutching what appeared to be a severe burn across his chest. Impossible, Kralfex snarled, his voice carrying both pain and disbelief. The prey has military-grade weapons. This was not in the behavioral profile. Sarah was already moving, using the smoke as cover. She had wounded them and gained a tactical advantage, but she needed to press it. These creatures had underestimated human ingenuity, and that mistake might be the only chance she would get. The tables turned. The wounded alien stumbled through the smoke, his burn wound leaking a phosphorescent green fluid. Sarah tracked his movement from her concealed position, noting how the creature favored its left side. The phosphorus had damaged more than just his armor. She waited until he was within range, then struck. Years of military training had taught her that when fighting superior technology, you had to get close and personal. The hunting knife slid between the alien's carapace plates with surprising ease, finding the soft tissue beneath. The creature's dying scream echoed through the forest, a sound that would haunt Sarah's dreams forever. But she had no time for horror. She had just proven that these aliens could be killed, and she needed to capitalize on that knowledge. The dead alien's equipment was far beyond her understanding, but some things were universal. The device that looked like a weapon went into her pack. The communication device that was buzzing with alien voices might be useful. Most importantly, the small recording device that seemed to be documenting the hunt. Sarah had spent her career documenting the natural world. Now she was documenting something that would change everything. The message 2 hours later, Sarah reached the high ridge she had been aiming for. Her improvised jamming countermeasures, cobbled together from the UN. Alien's own technology had cleared enough interference for her satellite phone to connect. The signal was weak, but functional. This is Captain Sarah Chun. Emergency broadcast to all frequencies. She spoke into the device while simultaneously uploading the alien recording to every cloud storage service she could access. I am currently under attack by non-human entities in the Alaskan wilderness. These beings have been hunting humans for sport. I repeat, Earth is under attack by hostile aliens. I have visual confirmation and recorded evidence. The threat is real and immediate. The response was immediate and predictable. Disbelief, demands for proof, accusations of mental breakdown. Sarah had expected this. She kept broadcasting, uploading, and transmitting every piece of evidence she had gathered. I'm sending you video footage of the aliens and their technology, she continued. I'm also uploading their own hunting records. They've been doing this for years, maybe decades. People who disappeared in remote areas, attributed to accidents or animal attacks. They were murdered for sport. Below her, she could see the remaining 2 aliens scaling the cliff face with inhuman speed. They were no longer treating this as a game. She had wounded their pride, killed their companion, and exposed their activities to the world. The hunt had become personal. The final gambit, Sarah examined the alien weapon she had taken from the dead hunter. It was surprisingly light, with controls that seemed to respond to touch and pressure. She managed to activate it just as the first alien reached the ridge. The energy blast took Kralthex completely by surprise, burning through his carapace and dropping him screaming into the ravine below. Sarah felt sick at the necessity, but she was fighting for more than her own life now. She was fighting for every human who had been hunted by these creatures. Huntmaster Vextar reached the ridge just in time to see his lieutenant fall. 4. The first time in centuries of hunting, the apex predator felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. You primitive savage, he snarled, his forearms spreading wide to reveal an arsenal of weapons. You have no idea what you have done. The Kethfer hunting lodge spans 1,000 worlds. We have harvested species across the galaxy. Your pathetic planet will burn for this insult. Sarah kept her captured weapon trained on him while backing toward her emergency beacon. Maybe it will, she said calmly, but you won't be alive to see it. The alien's response was a roar of rage and a blistering assault with weapons that turned rock to glass and trees to ash. Sarah dove and rolled, using every piece of cover on the ridge while returning fire with the alien weapon. The battle raged. For 20 minutes, 2 apex predators from different worlds locked in mortal combat. In the end, it was human ingenuity that won. Sarah had noticed that the alien weapons created a brief energy feedback when they overheated. She goaded Vextar into sustained fire until his weapon systems began to fail, then struck with the precision of a trained soldier. The huntmaster of the Kethfer hunting lodge died on a remote Alaskan ridge, killed by the very prey he had come to hunt for sport. The world listens. As Sarah activated her emergency beacon and broadcast the final pieces of evidence, she had no idea that her message was already spreading across the globe. The alien recording devices had contained detailed logs of hundreds of hunts across Earth, dating back 50 years. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and terrifying. Within hours, every major government on Earth was mobilizing. The military was analyzing the alien technology Sarah had captured. Scientists were studying the physiological data from the alien corpses. Intelligence agencies were cross-referencing disappearances with the hunting logs. But most importantly, humanity was getting angry. The Kethver had made a fundamental mistake in their assessment of their prey. They had assumed that humans were isolated, primitive, and helpless. They had not realized that humans were tribal, vengeful, and very, very good at warfare. Sarah looked up at the stars as rescue helicopters approached her position. Somewhere out there, the Kethver hunting lodge was probably planning their revenge. They expected to face the same scattered, helpless humans they had been hunting for decades. They were about to discover that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Humanity's Wrath, the War Room, 72 hours. After Sarah Chun's broadcast, the Pentagon's most secure conference room hosted an emergency meeting that would have been impossible to imagine a week earlier. President Martinez sat at the head of the table, flanked by generals, scientists, and intelligence directors. At the far end, Sarah herself sat with her arm in a sling, still wearing the torn clothing from her ordeal in Alaska. Ladies and gentlemen, President Martinez began, her voice carrying the weight of command. We are no longer alone in the universe, and we are not at the top of the food chain. The question before us is simple. How do we respond to a threat that has been hunting us for sport for half a century? General Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood to address the room. The alien technology Captain Shun recovered has been analyzed by our best scientists. The good news is that their weapons and equipment are advanced, but not magical. The bad news is that they're approximately 200 years ahead of us technologically. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the lead scientist on the Alien Technology Project, activated a holographic display showing the captured Kethver equipment. The weapons operate on principles we understand, but cannot yet replicate. However, we've identified weaknesses. Their technology is optimized for hunting individual targets, not for large-scale warfare. They're raiders, not conquerors. Sarah spoke up from her position at the table. They're also arrogant. The Huntmaster told me that the Kethver have been doing this for centuries across the galaxy. They've never faced organized resistance from their prey. They have no concept of species-wide retaliation. President Martinez nodded grimly. Then we're going to teach them. General Harrison, what's our current military readiness? All branches are at DEFCON 1. We've detected 17 more Kethvar hunting vessels in Earth's system. Using the scanning technology we reverse-engineered from their equipment. Each ship carries between 20 and 30 aliens. We estimate total hostile forces at approximately 500 individuals. 500 alien hunters against 8 billion humans, Sarah said quietly. They have no idea what they've started. Hunters become hunted. The Kethver had expected their missing hunting party to be the result of equipment failure, or perhaps a particularly dangerous native predator. They had not expected to find human military forces waiting for them when they arrived to investigate. Huntmaster Thexval brought his ship into Earth's atmosphere expecting to find 3 dead hunters and some interesting prey. Instead, he found the skies filled with human aircraft and his stealth systems being tracked by technology that should not have existed on this primitive world. Impossible, he snarled as missile locks appeared on his ship's display. How are these savages tracking us through our adaptive camouflage? The answer came in the form of 6 fighter jets, launching a coordinated attack with weapons that had been hastily modified with alien technology. The missiles that struck the Kethver ship burned through its hull with the same energy signatures as their own weapons. Thexval's ship crashed in the Nevada desert, where human forces were waiting. The Huntmaster survived the crash, but found himself surrounded by soldiers carrying weapons that fired alien energy blasts. He had become the prey, the interrogation DR. Reeves studied the captured alien through reinforced glass in the most secure facility in North America. Dexval was restrained but conscious, his amber eyes burning with hatred and disbelief. "You cannot comprehend what you have done," he spoke through the translation device they had built from captured technology. "The Kethfer hunting lodge spans 1,000 worlds. We have harvested species across the galaxy for millennia. Your pathetic planet will be cleansed of all life for this insult." Sarah, watching from the observation deck, felt a cold anger building in her chest. "How many humans have you killed?" "Thousands," Vexville replied with pride. "Your species provides excellent sport. You fight with such desperation, such futile hope. But you are cattle, nothing more." General Harrison stepped forward. "Where is your homeworld?" The alien's mandibles clipped in what might have been laughter. "You think to threaten the Kethver? You are insects playing with technology you cannot understand. When the Lodge discovers what has happened here, they will send the Great Hunt. 10,000 warriors will descend upon your world and make your species extinct." Dr. Reeves exchanged glances with Sarah. "He's telling the truth about the technology. Gap. But he's also telling us that their entire species is built around hunting and warfare. They have no concept of industrial capacity or mass production." Sarah nodded slowly. "They're apex predators. They've never needed to organize for total war because they've never faced an enemy that could fight back effectively. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that evolved from persistence hunters." The counterattacked aliens' navigation systems had been damaged in the crash, but not destroyed. Within weeks, human scientists had not only decoded the star charts, but had begun adapting human spacecraft with alien technology. The first test was a modified nuclear submarine that could now travel through space. The USS Leviathan, commanded by Captain Rodriguez, represented humanity's first venture into interstellar warfare. Its crew of 150 included military personnel, scientists, and one very determined wildlife photographer who had become the world's leading expert on alien psychology. "Target confirmed," reported the navigation officer as they approached the Kethver hunting station orbiting a distant star. "Detecting multiple alien vessels and what appears to be a processing facility." Sarah studied the readings from the sensor. "Array. That's where they prepare their trophies. Probably the heads of every sentient species they've hunted across the galaxy." Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Not anymore. All stations, prepare for assault. Let's show these bastards what happens when they hunt humans." The attack was swift and brutal. The Kethver hunters had never faced coordinated military assault by their former prey. Their ships were designed for stealth and individual combat, not fleet actions. The modified human weapons tore through their defenses like paper. But the real shock came when the humans began boarding the alien vessels. The Kethver had expected their technological superiority to provide safety. They had not expected human marines armed with alien weapons and earth-forged determination. The Lodge Burns the Kethver homeworld was a paradise of crystal spires and floating gardens built on the wealth extracted from 1,000 hunting expeditions. The Great Lodge itself was a monument to their supremacy, containing trophies from every species they had successfully hunted to extinction. Hunt Supreme Vex Kaller, the absolute ruler of the Kethver, stood in his trophy hall when the reports began arriving. First one hunting party, then another, and entire fleets going silent. The impossible was happening. The prey was fighting. "Back. Impossible," he repeated for the 100th time as another report arrived. "Send the war fleets. Deploy the extinction protocols. This infestation will be cleansed from the galaxy." But it was already too late. The humans had learned quickly, adapting alien technology to their own purposes with a speed that terrified the Kethver scientists. Worse, they had done something no prey species had ever accomplished. They had united their entire planet in A coordinated war effort. The first human fleet to reach the Kethver homeworld was not a ragtag group of modified spacecraft. It was a coordinated armada of warships built with the combined industrial capacity of an entire world. Ships that carried weapons designed specifically to kill Kethvar, crewed by humans who had seen the hunting logs and knew exactly what these aliens had done to their species. The end of the hunt, the battle for the Kethvar homeworld, lasted 3 days. The aliens had superior individual technology, but they faced an enemy that had learned to wage total war. Human tactics, human weapons, and human fury proved to be an unstoppable combination. Sarah stood on the bridge of the USS Vengeance as it entered orbit around the dying Kethvar homeworld. Below, the crystal spires were falling, the floating. Gardens were crashing to the ground, and the Great Lodge was burning with the collective rage of 1,000 extinct species. "Captain Chun," said Admiral Thompson, the overall commander of the human fleet, "you've earned the right to send the final message." Sarah took the communication device and opened a channel to the surface. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of Earth. Your species made a mistake when you chose to hunt humans for sport. You assumed we were isolated, primitive, and helpless. You were wrong on all counts. Today, the Kethver Hunting Lodge ends forever." The response came from Hunt Supreme Vex Kaler himself, his voice carrying defeat and disbelief. "You have doomed yourselves. There are other species, other hunters. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." "We don't need to fight the entire galaxy," Sarah replied calmly. "We just need to make sure that every predator species out there knows what happens when you hunt humans. When you make us your prey, we make you extinct." Epilogue. The New Order 5 years later. Sarah stood in the memorial garden that had been built on the ruins of the Great Lodge. Crystal spires had been replaced with simple stone monuments, each one bearing the name of a species. The Kethver had hunted to extinction. The human names were at the center, but they were not alone. The galaxy had learned the lesson that humanity taught. Predator species that had terrorized the outer worlds for millennia suddenly found themselves facing organized resistance. Humans had not only survived their attempted extermination, but had become the protectors of the weak, the defenders of the prey. Captain Rodriguez joined her at the memorial, his hair now gray from years of commanding humanity's expanding fleet. "The Andorian delegation is requesting human advisors for their defense force. The Zephyrians want to establish a mutual defense treaty. It seems like everyone wants to be friends with the species that ended the Kethver." Sarah smiled grimly. "Good. Let the word spread across the galaxy. Humans are not prey. We're not victims. We're the species that turns hunters into the hunted." She looked up at the stars, where human ships now patrolled the space lanes, protecting trade routes and defending colonies. The galaxy was a safer place because humans had refused to accept their role as prey. "They wanted to hunt us for sport," she said quietly. "Instead, they taught us that we were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They just didn't know it yet." The memorial garden was quiet, except for the wind through the trees that had been planted in memory of the dead. But among the stars above, the message was spreading. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the end, the Kethver had been right about one thing. The hunt had indeed been glorious. They had simply been wrong about who the hunter was.